Hi, friends. This is Jim Wortham. It's June the 6th, 2024. And topic tonight is the power of kindness. And I'm going to be sharing something very personal with you. And maybe two examples of what kindness, how they can change people. And I'll give you a little bit of background first, and that is that my past life was very rocky. What I mean by that was I was a failure as a teacher, and I dropped out of college numerous times. And I'll just end by saying that I spent enough years to be able to earn uh, master degrees that would allow me to be a therapist, psychologist, marriage and family therapist, alcohol and drug counselor, and school psychologist. I was not, reason I mention that is just to let you know I'm not just a bum that just making this stuff up. If you really want to know how I felt about myself as a counselor or therapist, whatever one you want to use, I would say the only good thing about what I did was I listened to people and I was kind to them. I didn't have all these techniques. I took courses and uh, a lot of courses in hypnotism. I never used it on people. Didn't feel right about it. Um, I was so insecure about my own abilities after I had to retake exams in my licensing field several times before I passed them that I felt like a imposter in the field of counseling and therapy. I remember the steps going up to the second floor of the biggest managed care company in Louisville, and thinking, who do I think I am to give advice to people? Also, I need to tell you that before that, it took around 3 years for me to get my first job after I did get my license because I was older than the normal person who finished whatever degree they were working on. Mine was clinical psychology. Um, too many people wanting jobs and not enough jobs in Louisville, Kentucky. 3 years later, the very person that told me not to give him a resume called me up. I gave resumes to everybody. I interviewed. I got hired, so to speak, and next day they wouldn't answer the phone when they said, call the next day and we'll line you up to see the human resources lady. I told myself that what's the use of trying anymore? What's the use of trying? I had a preacher that I kind of liked, and he says, "Let's go over to Charter Hospital. They're opening up today. Art Linkletter, the famous Art Linkletter that lived to be about 100 years old, was going to speak there because his daughter jumped out of an apartment and killed herself because she had a bad LSD trip. So he was the opening speaker to all the charter hospitals. The preacher says to me, "Why don't we go over there and listen to him?" So I said, "Fine, yeah, I'd like to do it." I go over there. Beautiful building. Water coming out of a spring when you walked in. Beautiful carpet. Only one floor. Inpatient for people that needed psychiatric help, and outpatient for those mostly that needed alcohol and drug treatment. Reran alcohol and drug outpatient um, treatment programs. The preacher says, "Claim what room you want. This is going to be your first job." His name was Frank Hoffman, Reverend Frank Hoffman. I said, "Frank, with no experience, there's no way I'm going to work in a place like this." Now, I have not, at this point, had a job in the mental health field. Never. I substitute taught, but that was in schools that I'd prefer not to talk about right now. So we're sitting there. He says, claim it that you're going to work here." I said, "Frank, I'll do it, but it ain't going to happen." Well, over the next 6 months, I was putting in applications everywhere. I was interviewing. I was promised jobs that I never got. This particular charter hospital, the brand new one I'm talking about, that had an open house. The guy in charge of the outpatient department, alcohol and drug section, program rather, told me, he looked at my resume and he said, "Jim, don't apply here. I don't want your resume." He says, "You don't have 3 years experience in charter hospitals. We want people with at least 3 years experience in treatment." So I didn't give him a resume. I continued looking for jobs. I kept interviewing, and then one day he calls me up and he says, "Jim, are you working?" Well, I was embarrassed, but I said no. He says, "Come down tomorrow. We're going to hire you part-time, and you can build it up to full-time." He did not have a sheet of paper on me, but he did know I did an internship at Our Lady of Peace in Louisville in alcohol and drug treatment, outpatient. No, inpatient. I had worked inpatient for 6 months free. So I go in and do something real stupid. I go to Human Resources, and they said, we need one more thing before you leave. They said, we need a urine test. And I said, excuse me, I had to get my Coke. He said, she said, we need for you to go down there, and I got a little Coke on my computer keys. I think it's off. We need for you to go down and give a urine test. We have to check everybody out to be sure they're not on drugs. Well, what was so interesting about this was that I had drank with my wife a bottle of wine to celebrate the night before. So I said to the human resource lady, "Look, I've got another interview here in a few minutes, and I'll come back tomorrow and give that urine test. But right now, I gotta be out of here." Because I knew I had alcohol in my system from drinking wine the night before. I got hired, but I was just waiting to be fired. I was sure that before I got my first check, I was going to be fired. Nothing happened. I actually was able to take over the position of the man who had hired me because he went into private practice. So once I got into the field, I went upward. I was not confident in myself. I remember one time I was doing group therapy. I did an outpatient program, and it was 4 hours. And I remember things that just they wouldn't talk. And it usually was because there was a game, and they planned it before they came in to not talk and shut me down. So they did once, and I was so embarrassed. I let them go home early. Found out later they planned it that way. They wouldn't talk. I was the one that was doing all the talking for 4 hours. But we didn't go 4 hours. I'm not sure we went 30 minutes. I said, it's pretty obvious that we're going to have to take this up tomorrow. Found out that there was a big game on. I don't know, Super Bowl or something equivalent to it. They told me that. They said they were outside in a parking lot planning on how to shut me down. Well, the way I felt was if there'd been a hole in the floor, I would have just jumped into it and been done with it. That's how much confidence I had in myself, and I got better. I hope I got better. A major managed care company in Louisville found out that I worked with people with alcohol and drugs, and they hired me over part-time because their own alcohol and drug counselor didn't show up half the time. So here I'm working over a charter, and then I get a phone call, can I come over to United Behavioral Systems? That was the name of it, United Behavioral Systems. I said, sure. In the middle of that, University Humana Hospital said they needed someone as a substitute, which I had a degree to do this, to work from midnight till 8 in the morning. So I had 3 jobs When I finally got my first job, I had 3 jobs within a few weeks or months. The reason I'm telling you all this is because of how lousy things were till I was about 30 some, and once I I was let out of the gate and in the race, I never went without a job. I never I could have had more jobs than I'm telling you about. This is Coca-Cola, if you're wondering. Okay, I never thought of myself as a good counselor. Okay, I thought of myself as a imposter. Why are they hiring me to work at these different places? I mean, I was book learned, but I wasn't experience learned. I didn't even know how to write a progress note. I asked a nurse, how do you write a progress note? She showed me the doctor's progress notes, and I couldn't read them. They wrote them real sloppy. And I said, did the doctor write this so that if he was taken to court, he could say anything he wanted to because they couldn't read what he wrote? She said, you're catching on, aren't you? You're catching on. Then I asked, at that time I wasn't director of charter, but I was under the director. And I would ask him, now I'm supposed to do a progress note after each person. How do I do it? He says, about right about that much. Would you believe this? That in a master's degree in clinical psychology, which I think I took about 48 hours, credit hours, there was not a single thing on any of how to write a progress note, what was expected, what a treatment plan was. No. I guess I learned that from, supposed to learn it from intuition. Moving on with this, they closed charter down, and United Behavioral Systems picked me up full time at a tremendously high income that I never had before. It was in the 30s. 35,000, 37,000, I don't know. But when you're used to making 24,000, that sounds like a big deal, doesn't it? So I worked there, and University Hospital, to work in their psychiatric unit, for me to evaluate people that came in that was off their medicine and they were schizophrenic or bipolar, and they were acting a little bit off balance, thinking they were Jesus. I'd ask them why. I mean, they did they have experience, supernatural experience? What, or did they think they met Jesus, or what? I took them seriously, not because I thought it was true. It was because of kindness. Okay, so I love that. the 8 hours, midnight to 8 in the morning, and going back up to United Behavioral Systems and working people with people on an outpatient basis that I would be seeing over and over and over again. And this is kind of strange that I mention this. I was out of battery power. I plugged it in a minute ago and it's charging, so we're going to be okay. I worked so many hours I was falling asleep at the stoplights, so I had to tone down the number of hours I was working. So once I got my first job, it was go all the way. And again, I listened. I asked questions. I never criticized. I was always kind. Now, I know I need to tell you what I was really going to focus on, and that was the power of kindness. I went to eat at Boneyard Grill, Sports Grill, tonight. And I saw someone that I had seen about 20 years ago. Yeah, I'm that old. Yeah, I'm an old booger. Well, I had seen this guy when he came in, and he recognized me. I didn't know him. This was about 3 weeks ago. I know he looked familiar, but I didn't quite remember his name. He came over and introduced himself and said he. I knew how long I had seen him. It was a long time. He had more problems than I felt I could help him with. But I always listened. I was always kind. I did not necessarily comment on his lifestyle, even though it would not have been the lifestyle I would have picked. Should I say it or should I not? This is Pride Month. And we would discuss his preferences with who he dated. And I've never been a judgmental person. And we would talk, and then he'd drop out, and then he'd come back. And you had to love the guy. You had to love the guy. He was that type of a person. Not sure what he should do, confused, young. Went to modeling school to become a model, maybe to become a movie star. All of a sudden, so he comes in after all these years and introduces himself, and we talk. We talk for maybe 15 minutes. And then anytime I went into Boneyard, he'd wave at me, maybe say a word or two because he was very busy. I didn't know he was general manager at that point. He had been hired in as general manager. I had a waitress today, bless her heart. Her name's Bev. I said, who's manager here? She says, I am. She says, but we have a general manager here. He's a new guy. Without even knowing who I was, who this was going to go out to, because I knew most of the people that had worked there. I said, would you tell your general manager that Jim Wortham says hi? And I thought it might be the owner, whose name's Jeff, but it wasn't. She comes back. Within 3 minutes. She says, he said he would not be here if it wasn't for you. I looked at her, my waitress, and I said, what did he say? I would not be here working at this place if it wasn't for what he did. Well, talking about being speechless, I was. Still am. Can kind words do that? I had no special talent. I had no special talent, kindness. I did do one thing. I'd go into the restrooms between clients and ask God to give me the right words to say. I would ask the Holy Spirit to speak the words I should speak. I started that when I worked at United Behavioral Systems because I was so inadequate as far as knowing what I was walking into. Okay, I'm going to jump one more story and we're done. This guy, I was working privately. I worked privately for the last 25 years. I worked, made a lot of mistakes, signing leases that buried me financially, but paid them off anyhow. I think I met with this guy once or twice. And maybe sooner or later he'll see this video. Or both of them will. I don't know. That's why I don't want to say too much. That's why I'm not saying any names. This guy comes to see me. He has a meth problem and maybe cocaine and marijuana. And I see him. I think he had seen other counselors. I said, well, I guess we better think about how to get you off of this. And I have no idea what we said. What can you say in 2 or 3 sessions? With a session being an hour. How can you change a life in 2 or 3 1 hour sessions? How can you do that? I would say you can't. So he called me up. I knew him, but I can't visualize the conversation. I can realize one thing I said. He said he was moving to Ferry Street. And I said, that's not a good thing. I said, that's where all the people with the drugs live. And so call me up and let me know how things go. I said, I hate to tell you this. I said, that this isn't going to be a good ending for you. But I do want to hear from you again. And I heard from him about 3 years later after he got out of prison. That was a drug section of Madison, Indiana. I was at the Salvation Army picking up a friend who needed a ride. And a man comes in and he has brochures of Celebrate Sobriety. He says, do either one of y'all need any circulars to give out? This is a Christian 12-step program that I'm running. I said, I'll take them. I said, I see people with drug problems. He looks at me kind of strange and he says, I don't think we've met before. She says, what's your name? I said, Jim Wortham. Oh, Lord. It was like an explosion. He says, my wife works in the other room as a counselor at the Salvation Army. She knows you too because you used to refer people to the LifeSpring inpatient program. LifeSpring was a community mental health facility. He says, I was told you were dead. It's honest goodness truth. I was told you were dead. I said, that's because probably I moved and I forgot to tell them where I moved my office to, and they may have said that just for a joke. He said, you really are Jim Wortham? You're Jim Wortham that I met and talked to? Yeah. Yeah, I'm still alive. He says, just wait a minute. He goes and gets his wife. His wife comes in. He says, he's still alive. That's Jim Wortham. He's still alive. Well, I even got an email from them in the last 24 hours due to the fact that we've been fighting some illness. We go out to eat. He said something. Again, I don't believe it. That it was me. It had to be. Some people call it God. Some people call it Jesus. Some people call it the Holy Spirit. I said nothing to him that would have changed his life, made him a Christian, and got him ordained as a preacher. When he got out of prison, he was an ordained preacher, or became an ordained preacher. So what is it? Is it kindness? Is it someone's working with me? Somebody, or maybe somebody's that I believe in. Thanks for listening. If you want to subscribe, please do. And thank you for listening.